2000's Disney, scorned by most, adored by some. This, I feel, is the most underrated era in the company's history. Coming fresh off of a generational run with the Renaissance era, most people thought that Disney would keep the ball rolling. And yet, when you mention movies from the 2000s era, a lot of people don't think on them too fondly. With the exception of Lilo and Stitch and Meet the Robinsons, plus The Princess and the Frog, the other films either went under the radar or gained cult followings in the years since their releases. In today's video, I'm going to go through each of the movies that came out from 2000 to 2009. So then, let's get to it, shall we? For clarification, I'm going to omit Fantasia 2000 for two reasons. One, I actually never saw the movie, and two, it technically released on December 17th of 1999, but I'm going to specifically be going for movies in the Walt Disney Animated Classics line that range from 2000 to 2009. To kick off the new century, Disney released Dinosaur on May 19th of 2000. The movie follows Aladar, an orphaned iguanodon who gets adopted and raised by a family of lemurs. He lives a peaceful existence with them until a near-extinction-level event forces them from their home. They then stumble upon a herd of dinosaurs trying to make their way to the nesting grounds while battling severe drought and shortage of food, while also fending off hungry predators. Hell, it's a battle for survival, alright. 5-year-old me absolutely adored this movie. I was absolutely obsessed with dinosaurs as a kid. But then again, I feel like most kids had a dinosaur phase. It can't have just been me. Jurassic Park, The Land Before Time, BBC's Walking with Dinosaurs, specifically the Allosaurus documentary, and Dinosaur would be played religiously in my VCR back in the day. I was always mesmerized by this movie's animation, which, in my honest opinion, still holds up phenomenally well to this day. Which is honestly pretty awesome, considering that this was Disney's first crack at a CGI animated feature film, not counting Toy Story because that was Pixar pre-acquisition. Dinosaur was specifically a Walt Disney animated feature film. I thought the story was great, the characters fun, and the soundtrack absolutely beautiful and majestic. This movie's a core childhood memory, and is one I look back on fondly. I definitely feel that this one doesn't get nearly as much love as it deserves. So y'all, if you've been sleeping on this one, get on it, for I know in my heart of hearts that you are going to enjoy what you see. Up next is one of my all-time favorite Disney movies that I frequently rewatch, and that is The Emperor's New Groove, released on December 15th of 2000. This one follows Emperor Kuzco, a spoiled brat who pretty much has had everything handed to him his entire life. For his 18th birthday, he wants to build a vacation home, and so he searches for the perfect place to do so and decides to make Pacha's village the site for his vacation home, unfortunately putting Pacha in quite the predicament. While in the background, Yzma, the Emperor's advisor and the one who raised him, seeks to usurp him and take the throne. And she seeks to solidify her plans by basically killing the Emperor. And with the help of her buff and burly henchman Kronk, he kinda sorta technically does get the job done, but whereas instead of killing the Emperor, he turns him into a llama. And in trying to dispose of him, he actually loses him. Kuzco, in turn, ends up with Pacha, wanting to be returned to his home and turned back into a human. Pacha agrees only under the condition that Kuzco build his vacation house somewhere else. What ensues is a hilarious and absolutely timeless classic adventure that sees the Emperor seeing the error of his ways and becoming a better person by the end. I cannot stress enough how much I love this movie to death. Like, I can watch this a million times and I will laugh all the same. And while yes, Kuzco and Pacha are funny as hell, the people that steal the show are Kronk and Yzma. This is Patrick Warburton and Eartha Kitt's show. Like, this is their movie. Anytime that they are on screen, you're guaranteed the best laughs in the whole movie. Fun fact, this movie was actually supposed to be a musical epic called Kingdom of the Sun. But because of creative differences, poor test screenings, and a troubling development cycle, this movie was instead retooled into the one we know today. And honestly, I am quite happy we live in the timeline where we got this instead of Kingdom of the Sun. Not gonna lie, I would have been interested to see how Kingdom of the Sun would have turned out, but I'm not complaining over Emperor's New Groove. In addition to being one of my absolute favorite Disney films of all time, it also spawned a fantastic sequel, which is one of my all-time favorite Disney direct-to-video sequels, Kronk's New Groove, in addition to the Emperor's New School TV show. This movie's comedy is golden and is borderline adult sitcom humor without it being borderline adult sitcom humor. If you haven't watched it yet, what are you waiting for? Check it out! The following year brought us another banger that holds a special place in my heart as another of my all-time favorite Disney movies, Atlantis: The Lost Empire, released on June 15th of 2001. The movie follows Milo Thatch, an archaeolinguist who desperately wants to prove the existence of Atlantis, as told by his late grandfather, Thaddeus Thatch. His peers basically mock him for believing in what amounts to a fairy tale, therefore deciding not to fund his research into discovering Atlantis. But not all hope is lost, as Preston B. Whitmore, an old friend of Milo's grandfather, takes an interest in the young man's quest and therefore funds his expedition to Atlantis. Or more so, to find it, as it were. The end result is an incredible adventure that defies the imagination. From the moment I saw the opening sequence of the fall of Atlantis with little Kida witnessing everything take place, I fell in love. And what I love so much about this movie is that it feels decidedly not Disney. Like, if you compare the output of the things that they release nowadays, Atlantis just seems like something they would never do. It was a fantastic adventure movie with an incredible visual art style. But I mean, of course, you could say that about all of Disney's 2D animated films because compared to their 3D counterparts, the 2D hand-drawn art styles always stuck out. The sense of discovery, the high stakes, the action, the comedy, the budding romance between Milo and Kida, and may I just take a moment to say, oh my god, Kida. Definitely a childhood crush. Definitely, I would definitely say so. To quote a Milo Thatch, I swim pretty girl, pretty good. I swim pretty good. And of course, I can't talk about this movie without mentioning the amazing supporting cast. Quite possibly one of the best supporting casts in any Disney movie. Diverse, unique, multicultural, and genuinely funny, the supporting cast of Atlantis really stood out. And Rourke, of course, was a fantastic villain. But all in all, this is a movie that did not get enough love when it released, but has gained a massive cult following ever since. Definitely check this one out, I beg of you. What came next in the following year is a movie that took the world by storm, and out of all the movies that will be mentioned in this video, it is easily one of the most recognizable of the 2000s era. That being Lilo and Stitch, released on June 21st of 2002. Said movie follows the titular Stitch, an illegal experiment created by Dr. Jumba Jookiba, who is facing exile but is able to escape before he is sent to exile. He crash lands on Earth, specifically Hawaii, and through the machinations of fate ends up in the custody of Lilo, a little girl who tragically lost her parents, who lives with her sister Nani, who is struggling to make ends meet as she is Lilo's sole custodian and guardian, and is basically having trouble keeping a job while also fending off child services. Feeling like an outcast, Lilo simply wishes for a friend. But unbeknownst to her, she gets one in the form of Stitch. What follows is a story of found family, and it is honestly one of the most heartwarming as well. This movie was an absolute success when it released. And honestly, the marketing was pretty genius. If any of y'all remember the trailers for this movie, they were very clever. I loved the crossover with other Disney properties. It was very unique. This movie's mature story was one of its strongest selling points. Of course, aside from the strongest selling point that is Stitch, who still gets plushies and merch to this day. This movie ended up becoming so big that it spawned multiple sequels, a TV series which I fondly remember to this day, video games, merch, a manga even, and an anime adaptation as well if I'm not mistaken, plus appearing in video games such as Kingdom Hearts. Which of course many Disney properties have, but since we're talking about Lilo and Stitch in particular, I just felt that that was a pretty cool thing to mention. Also kind of crazy that aside from Chicken Little, who will appear later on in this list, appears as a summon, Stitch is the only other character who has had any ties to Kingdom Hearts out of all the movies that I will be talking about in this video. Oh, that's right, there's also a live-action adaptation of this. Anyway, this one you should definitely add to your watch list, though you probably didn't need me to tell you that. The next movie I'm going to talk about is one that I also hold very dearly to my heart as one of my absolute favorite Disney movies of all time as well. Yes, I know, I've been mentioning that a lot in this video, but just trust me, let me cook. And y'all can understand where I'm coming from with this one because I'm not the first, nor will I be the last to talk about this one. And that would be Treasure Planet, released on November 27th of 2002. This one follows Jim Hawkins, who was a sort of a problem child, but only because he's had it rough in life. Being raised by a single mom who was doing her absolute best to give Jim the best life she possibly can, while having a father that basically walked out on them, yeah, I can understand how that would mess up Jim pretty bad. But as a child, in funder and happier times, he would read about Treasure Planet, a story that always fascinated him. When calamity strikes the Benbow Inn, and Jim has a chance to redeem himself and make something of himself, he joins Dr. Delbert Doppler to find Treasure Planet, and with the loot of 1,000 worlds, be able to rebuild the Benbow 100 times over. And during his journey, he meets John Silver, a cyborg who basically ends up being the father that Jim always wanted. Oh my god, what can I say about this movie that hasn't been said already? I mean, it's just great. A journey of self-discovery, growing up, and fostering the bonds of father and son. I mean, this movie has it all. And it being set to a sick sci-fi reimagining of Treasure Island? I mean, come on, how freaking cool is that? Out of all the movies on this list, this is easily the one that was done the dirtiest by Disney themselves. They basically tried to bury this movie, and when they put the release date so close to Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, or Sorcerer's Stone, however you want to call it, yeah, this movie didn't stand a chance. But despite all that, this movie gained an insanely massive cult following akin to Atlantis: The Lost Empire, and is still, to this day, one of the most beloved movies of the 2000s era. And John Silver's speech, brings a tear to my eye every time. And I mean, John Silver was such a fantastically written character. He wasn't just a villain, he was a multi-layered, complex character where you felt sorry for him, but you also knew that he was, a douche. But they made him so endearing that you hoped that he would turn out good in the end, that he would turn himself around. Just for Silver alone, I say this movie's already worth it, but you would be doing yourself a massive disservice if you did not give this one a shot. So please watch this one. The year after that, we get Brother Bear, released on November 1st of 2003. The story follows Kenai, a young man who is eagerly awaiting to get his totem, which in his tribe is basically a rite of passage into manhood. The totem he receives, though, the Bear of Love, is not one that he particularly is fond of. When a bear comes into the village and ravages a supply of salmon that Kenai was supposed to keep safe by suspending said fish high up into a tree, he recklessly decides to go after the bear. His older brothers Denahi and Sitka chase after him in the hopes that they can be able to save him from the bear. What results is a tragedy in which Sitka loses his life trying to fend off the bear. In retaliation, Kenai seeks vengeance, ends up killing the bear, and then, through a twist of fate, gets transformed into one, so he can learn to see through the eyes of a bear to symbolize the totem that he received, the Bear of Love. The end result is a story about empathy, love, understanding, and what it truly means to be a man. Brother Bear was a very good movie, and I remember rewatching it for the first time in years a couple of months ago, and it still holds up phenomenally well. Koda was an adorable little bear, and I love that he was the one accompanying Kenai on his journey to become human again. And I love how the movie makes it obvious that he is basically the cub of the bear that Kenai killed, even though it's not implicitly said. But the way that he says that he got separated from his mom is like you can add 2 and 2 together and you're like, oh no. When the twist comes around and Kota finds out Kenai's the one who killed his mom, oh no. It's a very touching story about brotherhood, and it basically helps to develop Kenai from an arrogant jerk into an empathetic man. Also, something that I didn't realize until a couple of years ago, Kenai was actually voiced by Joaquin Phoenix. I'm like, huh, how about that? I feel that the movie resonated with him because at the time he had lost his brother River Phoenix, and because of the whole Kenai losing Sitka situation, I feel like that's something that really resonated with him, and I feel that's one of the big reasons why he took the role. But yes, Brother Bear is a great movie, and I highly recommend it. The following year, we get Home on the Range, released on April 2nd of 2004. Here we follow Maggie the cow, who gets sold from the Dixon farm to Pearl in Patch of Heaven, due to a notorious outlaw cattle rustler, Alameda Slim, who had ended up putting poor Dixon's farm out of business. And just as Maggie's getting used to her new life in her new home, a notice of foreclosure threatens the existence of all the animals in Pearl's Patch of Heaven. If she isn't able to make a payment, then her whole entire farm, along with all of the livestock, will be sold. With Alameda Slim conspiring in the background to make sure that Pearl's farm runs out of business. But as it turns out, he has a bounty on his head, and Maggie basically gathers that if she's able to claim the bounty on Alameda Slim's head, it'll be enough to save Patch of Heaven from being sold out. And so she, along with her new friends Mrs. Calloway and Grace, embark on an epic adventure to save Patch of Heaven from the clutches of the greedy Alameda Slim. Out of all the movies on this list, this is the one that I remember the least. But that is because I believe I can count on one hand the amount of times I saw this movie, which I believe might have been twice. And I think only once did I see the entire way through. The other viewing, I think it was just sporadic, just like parts here and there. But from what I can remember, it was a pretty fun time, and the humor was akin to The Emperor's New Groove in terms of its goofiness and just general chaos and zany antics. And Alameda Slim's superpower being yodeling to mesmerize the cattle to basically go wherever he wants? I mean, that's kind of ridiculous, but hey, we've seen weirder things. I don't have all that much to say about this movie, and it honestly seems that no one else seems to either, just because of the fact that this movie rarely ever gets mentioned, if at all. Because even with Emperor's New Groove, Atlantis, and Treasure Planet, they get talked about consistently. But Home on the Range is definitely the more obscure pick out of all of these. Which again is a shame, because I honestly thought, from what I remember, that this movie was actually really fun. The following year, we would get, which is yet again another of my absolute favorite Disney animated classics, Chicken Little, released on November 4th, 2005. Chicken Little becomes the pariah of his hometown of Okie Oaks, because according to him, the sky was falling, though no one was there to witness it, and they honestly thought that he was making it up because an acorn fell on his head. Buck Cluck, his father, embarrassed by this event, basically tries to stave off the townspeople and just telling them that it was all just a mistake, not validating Chicken Little's feelings and basically not believing him. Which in turn ends up getting Chicken Little, well, for lack of a better word, unwanted attention as he gets a movie made about him, merchandise, and all of that, all just because people think that he was tripping when he said the sky was falling. And so, seeking to redeem himself and to make people forget about that whole shebang, he decides to try to play for the school's baseball team so that he can be able to hit a home run and make his dad proud. But then, one thing leads to another, leading Chicken Little back to square one as he faces the once again dire predicament of the sky falling. Only this time, it's actually happening. But fearing that he will be ridiculed by the townspeople once more, he enlists the help of his friends to get to the bottom of things, and to be able to solve the mystery of the sky falling, and a certain little someone that ends up being a little alien critter. Which then leads to a hilariously zany adventure filled with absolute hilarious hijinks and antics. I have very fond memories of this movie, and it is one that I would rewatch consistently and still do occasionally to this day. The pop culture references and jokes, the zany humor, the ridiculous characters, and the overall cast is very entertaining to watch. Chicken Little and his friends are very likable characters. Chicken Little's father, on the other hand, I can definitely understand the criticisms levied towards him because he's very unsupportive and basically gaslights his son into being a recluse and just hiding from the general public because of the whole sky falling incident. And though, he is pretty much a douche for most of the movie, he does have at least a little bit of redemption towards the end, and he does try to make the effort to be there for his son. Kirby is an adorable little ray of sunshine, and overall, the movie is just a really fun popcorn flick. This movie gets trashed on a lot, but I honestly love it. And this was also another of Disney's attempts at 3D animation. And as you'll notice in the next two entries on this list, this is the point in time where Disney started to veer more towards 3D animation as opposed to 2D hand-drawn animation. Little did we know that 2D hand-drawn Disney would soon be no more. Man. But yes, this one is a laugh-out-loud good time, and it's one I recommend watching. The year after, we would get... Okay, I know, y'all are probably getting tired of my saying this statement again and again multiple times in this video, but please bear with me. Another of my all-time favorite Disney movies, Meet the Robinsons, released on March 30th of 2007. Louis is an orphan who wants to have a family, but through multiple interviews with prospective parents and trying to impress them with his inventions, he never gets adopted, and that in turn, makes him feel sad, which is quite natural. Eventually, he stops accepting interviews altogether and instead focuses on creating an invention in which he'll be able to sift through his memories to the point in time where his mother left him at the orphanage so that he can be able to piece together how she looked like and then take it from there. But at the school science fair, he meets Wilbur, a mysterious boy who warns him about a bowler hat guy who's looking for him. Said bowler hat guy, or more specifically his accomplice Doris, tampers with Louis's invention, therefore causing him to become disgruntled, saddened, and frustrated. But not wanting Louis to give up on inventing, Wilbur encourages him to fix the memory scanner, and also ends up revealing that he is a time traveler, and that he would take Louis to the point back in time before everything happened so that he could be able to fix the memory scanner. But Louis has the epiphany that he can instead use the time machine to travel back to the point in time where his mother gave him up to convince her not to give him up. Through an ensuing argument, they both tamper with the time machine and end up busting it up, but ending up in the future where Wilbur is from. Not wanting to get himself in trouble, Wilbur pleads Louis to fix the time machine. Louis agrees, but only under the condition that Wilbur takes him back in time to see his mom. But as Louis gets to meet the rest of Wilbur's family, the Robinsons, he realizes that maybe he doesn't need to go back to see his mom. Maybe he's found the family he's always wanted right in front of him. This one is definitely one of the more feels-worthy ones, for sure. The story is very sincere and heartfelt. The Robinson family is absolutely laugh-out-loud funny, and they're honestly very unique and wonderful characters. And let's just talk about Bowler Hat Guy, aka Adult Goob. This man is a riot, and I absolutely love every moment that he's on screen. This is a similar case to Emperor's New Groove, where Kronk and Yzma made the movie. Bowler Hat Guy definitely made Meet the Robinsons. And I love this movie's message of self-acceptance and realizing that though you may not have had a happy beginning, and though you may not have ended up with the family you wanted, eventually, with the choices that you make, you keep moving forward, and you find that what you want isn't necessarily what you thought you did. That and the importance of failure, not to be ashamed of it, but to learn from it. For the best successes come from the worst of failures. And I'm a sucker for found family tropes. It's honestly really touching. And yet again, this was another of Disney's attempts at 3D animation. And honestly, I really like the visual style of this one. This one's definitely an all-timer for me, and just with its story alone, it is very well worth watching. After that, we would get Bolt, released on November 21st of 2008. The titular character of Bolt is a superhero, a super dog, if you will. And along with Penny, they both fight crime and stop the forces of evil. Only it just so happens that this is actually a TV show and Bolt actually doesn't have superpowers. But I mean, you don't have to tell him that because in his mind, he really is a superpower dog. And due to that unfortunate illusion, Bolt ends up thinking that Penny gets kidnapped, leading him to escape the set on which the series is being filmed. He's knocked unconscious and ends up in New York City, lost and powerless, quite literally. But with the help of stray cat Mittens and superfan hamster Rhino, Bolt seeks to make his way back to Penny, whatever the cost. And as he goes through his adventure, he realizes that maybe what he thought was real actually wasn't, and comes to grips with that. I definitely remember watching this one quite a few times when it aired on Disney Channel. And I enjoyed the whole aspect of this dog believing that he had superpowers and believing that he was actually part of this whole grand epic story of being a super dog against the forces of evil. I thought that it was actually pretty cool. And then his whole journey of him discovering himself and then realizing that he's actually, not a superpower dog and that he's just a normal dog. I thought that it's an interesting character journey to follow. Mittens was a sassy, entertaining cat, and Rhino the hamster was the comedic relief that really worked well for me. And as you could see, yet again, this was another of Disney's 3D animated films coming down the pipeline. But what I appreciated about these early 3D films is that they actually looked different from one another compared to the movies that would come out during the revival era. This is definitely one that I feel you would enjoy. And now we arrive at the final film in the 2000s era, The Princess and the Frog, released on December 11th of 2009. Tiana is an ambitious young woman with dreams of opening a restaurant to honor her late father's love of food and bring the community together. Her hard work finally pays off, as her best friend Charlotte basically commissions her to cater a massive event to welcome Prince Naveen, giving Tiana the remaining funds that she needs in order to be able to open her restaurant. Unfortunately, she learns that she has been outbid for the location in which she wanted to open her restaurant, and her dreams are dashed. Disheartened, she does something that she didn't think she would have to do. She wishes upon a star for her luck to change. Curiously enough, a frog appears, and let's just say things take a turn for the weird. Revealing himself to be Prince Naveen, who was transformed into a frog because of the Shadow Man, he tells Tiana the only way that he can be able to get back to normal is for her to kiss him, and he promises her that if she does so, that he will be able to help her out with getting the money she needs. But here's the twist though. She ends up becoming a frog as well. With the both of them in a seemingly precarious amphibious predicament, they now must work together in order to figure out a way to be human again. This was the second to last hand-drawn Disney animated film that came out from the studio because they would release Winnie the Pooh in 2011 during the revival era, and it honestly is such a throwback. You would think that this was a Renaissance era film. The animation is captivating, the music divine, the story wonderful and touching, and the characters just so much fun. It really saddens me that after this and Winnie the Pooh, we just stopped getting 2D animated Disney films, period, because from then on, we would just get 3D animated films. And I mean, nothing against 3D animation, but there's just something about 2D hand-drawn animation that just really, really scratches that itch, This one is one that is remembered fondly by many people, and I remember really liking this one upon first, second, and third watches. It's a movie that I find great enjoyment in watching, and Dr. Facilier, this man, being voiced by Keith David, absolutely legendary. And Friends from the Other Side, what an absolute bop! This was also a return to form, as this one was in fact a musical. With all these factors taken into consideration, I feel The Princess and the Frog is a movie that still stands the test of time and will always be a monument and love letter to 2D animated Disney. And well, there you have it, folks. That's it. We've reached the end of the video. I hope y'all enjoyed taking a walk down memory lane with me through this wonderful era of Disney movies. And while it is sad that these movies will always live under the shadow of the Renaissance era due to people's expectations, I feel that this was one of Disney's most experimental and most diverse and most fun eras. There was so much soul put into these projects, something that can't necessarily be said on modern Disney. And I hope that with this video, I was able to remind y'all of the absolute badassery and sheer magnificence of this era of Disney films. And for those that never watched them or may have only watched some of them, I hope that I got you curious enough to check them out. With that being said, which of these is your favorite? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you liked this video, please make sure to subscribe. But yes, until next time, this has been GamingOtakuGeek, signing out.